we left off for this persist project. We had the initializer so it could decode and set its checklist, and then the file wrapper, which was a saving process. So this is opening file saving. We had a rough data model consisting of these checklist items and a checklist. Now let's go ahead and we're going to create some views. So currently our view is taking this document text. I'm going to comment that out. And I'm going to create a folder for groups called new group for views. And move this down below our data model. And I like to put the apps on top. And I'll put content view under views. Okay. And then this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new file. And it'll be a Swift.io view file. And I'm going to call it checklist view. So it's going to show the checklists. Okay. And then under content view, we're just going to replace that with our checklist view. Okay. So now we can go ahead, build that, make sure that's good. Now our checklist view, time for us, we need to populate that with a few things. So one of these is we have this persistent document, okay, which is where all of our data model, which is checklist, and then how we interact with our data model is all in this persistent document. So this is acting as both a data model. This is our data model, but also it's going to act as our view model. So we're going to want to pass this document to lots of different views. So what we're going to do is under, let's check the app, make sure that's right. Document. Okay, new document. I think I'm missing some curly brackets here. Let's see if that fixes things. Okay. And then our content view, we're going to kind of get rid of this document and our content view. So we don't need this document anymore. Okay, and this should be checklist view. Okay, and it's going to clean that up a little bit for right now. Okay, so that's cleaned up. So now that's our app, that is our persistent document, and then our content view. Now our content view, let me take a look at my notes real quick. It's going to do our checklist view. Now our checklist view, it's going to have, we need access to our document. So we're going to call something called an environment object. It's going to be a variable. It's going to be our document. And this is our persistent document. Okay. Now, this app already, this document group right here, it's already created this environmental object that our checklist view is going to use. So that's all we need to do. And this is going to be passed in automatically. And that's because let's close this up so I don't have to flip back and forth to so many things. That is because our app has this document group, and document group has already declared this environment object called document of type, persistent document for us. We don't have to do anything more than that. If you had your own environment objects that weren't already declared, you'd have to put them in the view hierarchy like we did earlier. Okay. Now then, so our document is going to consist of a list, and right now we're just going to pass it no information, and within that list we're going to do a for each. Okay, and we are going to iterate over the document dot checklist dot items. Okay, so just to reiterate, if we go to our data model, this is our checklist and has this items of checklist. Okay, and then we need to get a view for each one of these for each. We got to pass it a view. Okay, and then what we're going to do is here we're going to pass in a binding to the item in. So we're gonna, for each is going to pop out a binding to item for us. And initially, we're going to create. Let's just put a text of the item dot title. Okay, so we're just going to start there, and then we'll make our rows a little more complicated in a second. Okay, and I'm going to run this, make sure it compiles. And currently it's attaching and updating some stuff, and we'll see if it compiles properly. I like to compile as I go through. And let's see, it should show up in a second. There we go. I can hit new document, and these are items. And this items 1, item 2, item 3. Remember, that was our default stuff that came in when we created our checklist. We had an extension that created these empty items, and demo list is what we called when creating a new document. Okay. Now for this, for each thing, instead of just a title, we're going to go and create another view. So over views, let's create a file, new file. It's going to be a Swift UI view file, and we're going to call it a checklist row. Checklist row. Okay. And this is going to be the row that each checklist is. So I'll put the row on the right, and I'll put my checklist view over here. Okay. And each row is going to show essentially the information from items. So let's create an at binding variable to the item, and it's of type checklist item. Okay. I'm going to comment out my views here because I'm going to be updating this and I wanted to deal with it. Okay, so we're going to create an item to this binding. Okay, and we can go ahead and create a toggle. I'm going to follow the tutorial. Okay, so we're going to create an H stack. Okay, and the H stack is going to first consist of a button. Okay, and that button is going to create a function. We'll call it on check toggle. Let's see, how can I simplify? Initially, let's just create a toggle button, and we're going to make it a little more sophisticated. So we're going to put a toggle. Okay, and not going to have a title, so we're just going to leave that blank. And is on is going to go to item dot is checked. Okay. And then that's the first thing. And then we're going to have the toggle, and then we're going to have a text of the item dot title. Okay, so we'll just start there. And now over here on our checklist view, instead of having this text, we're going to call checklist row, and we're going to pass it in a binding to this item. So that is item. Okay, and check it, see if it compiles. Okay, and let's take a look at this. This wasn't the tutorial using a toggle, but we'll see if it works. Okay, we hit new document, and that works. We have our nice little checkbox here. We have items. Now, we're missing a lot of functionality, okay? So some of the functionality we're going to start with is I would like to be able to rename these items, okay? Now, text is static. We can't change it. So let's start by changing this text, okay, to a text field. So I'm going to change this to a text field. We're going to have nothing in front of that text field, okay? The text is, we're going to put a binding to item dot title, okay? And we're going to start right there. Now, this needs to be a binding because the text field needs to update the text, and it needs to communicate back and forth between our data model, our view model, and everything. Okay, so let's see if we can change things. We can change things, and it's working pretty well. We could check things. That's working pretty well. And we're missing a couple features, such as drag and drop. So I'd like to be able to reorder these, okay? So let's take a look at at being able to reorder these things. Okay, so let's add in a delete and a move. Okay, so I want to be able to delete the items and I want to be able to reorder them. Okay, so at the end of, we're going to put this at the end of the for each. Yeah, this goes at the end of the for each. Okay. We are going to create a dot on move and a dot perform. So first we're gonna, if we go ahead and look at this dot on move, what this wants is it wants a function or a closure that takes an index set and an integer and returns void. Okay, so let's go ahead and create those functions. Okay, so the first one we'll do is on move. So function on move offsets is typically what's used, offset. And that's going to be an index set, which is right here. That's that index. And then to offset is where it's going to be put. That's an integer. Int. Okay. And it doesn't returns void. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a function in our document class that's going to handle the on move for us. Okay. So our document is going to handle the on move for us. So let's go ahead and we're going to create an extension on, what is this called? This is called persistent document. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to put some marks here so I can find it a little bit easier. Mark, and this is mark handling checklist changes. Okay, so this is going to handle changes to our checklist. And one of the ones we're going to have is we're going to have a function called move items at, and we're going to give it the offsets to let me, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong part. So move items. Okay, and we're going to start right here. Function, I'm going to just copy this in real quick. Copy, paste it, move this to the left. Move items from this index. Okay, and we're going to leave that alone right now. Okay, and then what we're going to say is we're going to do this thing called with animation, which we haven't talked about before. But with animation means that Swift UI is going to handle the animation. So when this thing goes into effect, with animation gets called. And we're going to do checklist.items. What the heck was that? Items dot move. And an array, this is an array of items, and it already has this move from offsets. Okay, so we can come in here and put offsets to offset to offset. Okay. So what we've done essentially is this move now up here. I'll flush out the code in a second. Okay. So this on move is going to call the document, and it's going to call the document's version of move items at, and then offsets, and this is to offset. Okay, and then this is going to perform on move. Okay, so let's talk about this. So this list has a thing called on move, which calls a function, another function called on move, and this thing passes in offsets and index, and this thing takes them. And the document has another function called move items at, and it's going to pass in these things again. We go to a document, it's going to checklist, and array has a thing called move. And we're going to pass it in. So the question is, how come we didn't just put this right here? Okay. And what's going to happen is you're going to see is we're going to add a lot of smarts to this move items at. We're going to add an undo manager. The undo manager, that's handled by the document. It's not handled by a view. A view doesn't know or care if there's undo managing or anything like that. So this view will call on move. On move will call the documents move at. Documents move at, we'll see, we'll add some undo capabilities. The document's going to handle, our view model is going to handle undoing and things like that for us. That's not the view's responsibility. That's the view model's responsibility. Okay? So that takes care of on move. Let's see if that works. And we can pull things around. This is really nice. We get that blue line telling us where we are. Because we put this on a with animation, we get the right type of animation here. And we didn't have to do anything to get that other than call with animation. Okay? Like I said, we could have called this right in here, or even right here, but we're going to add some logic to this that really belongs in the view model. Okay? So there's the on move. Let's add deleting. On delete. Okay? So we're going to have to create a function for on delete. And I'm just going to copy paste it in. Okay? Because it's pretty easy. And now we can have the comments here if we want. Okay? And we can see this is the same. So on delete here is going to call on delete. Okay? And we don't have to have the whole thing because this thing's smart enough to match these. Okay, and we haven't got the undo manager yet. Okay, so on delete. Now we have to add that to our document. So if we go to our document, we have the same type of thing. It's going to be, I'm going to copy this function and we'll just change it around a little bit. It's going to be delete items at, or I can just go delete. I'll do delete. Offsets index. Okay, and then this, instead of be remove, it's going to be remove, and all this wants is at you know what, I'm just gonna retype this because it's not coming out right. I tried to be lazy never works. So this is a delete function. Okay, it's gonna delete at the offsets, and that's going to be an index set is what that's going to come out, and this is a void function. And now we can call with animation. Okay, and this is a trailing closer, so I can clean those parentheses up a little bit. And it's going to be checklist.items.remove at, and that will be remove at offsets, and that will be those offsets. So the index set means we can have a bunch of things selected. Okay, and now all we have to do coming here is that should work, and this might need to say, yep, that looks like that works. So let's try this, and we should be able to swipe left and right and delete them. Okay, so we're making progress there, but we're missing some things. It'd be nice if we could add some items. Okay. Okay, there's add item. Okay. And let's go to our checklist. So I'm looking at my notes. So there's a delete and an add button. So it'd be nice if we could add some items. And remove some items. So I'm going to put it here, put a mark, and we'll call it Toolbar Buttons, okay? Or Toolbar Functions. These aren't the buttons, these are the functions that the buttons will use. Okay, so let's create, in this case, functions and, okay. Let's go ahead, in this case, we're going to create Toolbar Views, actually. So I'm looking at the right thing. Okay. And it's going to be a variable. And we're going to have an add button. And it's going to be something that is of type sum view. Because it's called sum because we don't know exactly what it's going to be. It's just going to be kind of generic view. We're going to create a button. And it's going to have an action with it. We'll put that in closures. Okay. And that action is going to be a with animation. Okay, and that's a trailing closure. And this is going to be document dot add item, and it will have a title. You know what? We got to create this. We need to create. Okay. Create document add item. Okay. So that's handling checklist changes. Let's go ahead and create that function in our document. Okay. So we'll have a function called add item. Okay, it's gonna take the title. What are we gonna call this item? Okay, and we're gonna come down here, add this function, and then we're gonna go checklist dot add item. Okay, of title. Okay, so now it's telling us that checklist has no value of type add item. So let's go to our checklist and let's create that functionality. Okay, so let's go take a look at my checklist. Okay, so under the checklist, we're going to add an extra extension to our checklist. Okay, and this is going to be a mutating function because it's going to change this list, and it's add item. And we'll call this item, and it's going to be a checklist item. Okay, and if that occurs, we're going to say items.append, and we could just pass in that item. Okay, and we're going to create a second one that's a little more easier to use, so we don't have to create a checklist item. A mutating function add item, and it's going to take a title and a string. Okay, and what that will do is we're going to create let new item equal checklist item, and the title is title that's being passed in, and then we'll call ourselves. We'll call add item and item, and we'll add in a new item. Okay, so this function will take a string. It'll create a new item with the title of that string, and then it calls the function above. Okay, the reason we do that is sometimes this is kind of a convenience one, and this is the one that works properly because it's calling append item. It gives us some options for how we do this. And okay, now we can come here to checklist dot add item, and we're using the title of this title. Okay, so now got some errors probably someplace else, but let's take a look. Let's talk about responsibility. The checklist knows how to add items. Okay, it takes care of its state itself. Okay, the document is going to call our data model. Our data model is this checklist. Our document is going to tell the data model, I don't know how you add items, but I know you can take a string for an item. You do whatever under the hood stuff you need to do there. Okay, but we're going to add items. Okay, now our document's good right there. Okay, and I'm going to print one to myself to add count. We're going to go over that a little bit later. Now if I go to my list view, okay, I can call this action. Go to my list view and my notes real quick. Add item. So with animation, okay, button action. Okay, and we're gonna call it with animation. So we'll call our document and say I want you to add an item with the title, another item. Okay. Now our button needs a little more information. It wants to know what it's going to look like. So we're going to create an image using system name, and we're going to give it the plus sign. Okay, and then one last thing to work on is let's make this borderless. Button style dot borderless. Okay. And now our build succeeded. So once again, we've created this add button view This view consists of a button with an action, and this time we put the animation in here just to show you that you can. You know, we can also put the with animation here if we wanted to. And then we passed it disclosure for the system name, or what it's going to look like, and we made this border style borderless. But the only thing that's missing is we got to put that button somewhere. Like, where's that button getting put? So we'll come over here to this list, okay, and we'll put in toolbar, okay. So we'll call toolbar, okay, and I'm only going to do the macOS version. If you want to look at the tutorial, we'll show you the how you can have macOS and iOS. I'm just going to save myself some time. But we're going to create a toolbar item. Oops. Toolbar item. Okay. And that item wants to take a view, and we're going to call the add button. Okay, so this is a calculated property that returns the view. A toolbar item just wants a view that does some stuff, which is what's doing with this action. Okay, so now let's run this. And now we have our button that adds more items, and we can move them around. We could, should be able to, how come I can't? But now I can't rename them. I can go like this, but we're having issues with this renaming. We'll take care of, there we go. We'll take care of that delay with renaming eventually, okay? Come on, click on it. Okay. And then let's go ahead and let's create a delete button. Okay, so who handles that state for our data? That's going to be our checklist. Okay, so we had an add item. Okay, so let's go to our checklist. And okay, so there's no delete on our checklist as our document. See how they handled the document? In this case, the document handled the deleting. Okay, so let's take a look at our document. Okay, so just like document handled add item, document handles the deleting. Okay, so we're gonna have let's see, delete items with these. Let me take a look at make sure I'm not missing anything. So we have delete item, and there's 3 versions of delete item. Okay. So we are going to, and this time I'm going to group my deletes together. So function delete, and we're going to delete an index this time on integer. Okay, and I'm going to write the other deletes together. Multiple ways things might want to get deleted. Okay, and we're going to say this, we don't care what the response is, a checklist dot items dot remove at index. Okay, now this array, this functional array called remove at index, it's going to return, when we remove it, it's going to actually return the item there. So what we're going to do is we're telling the system that we don't care, we're not going to do anything with that item. Okay, and then the last one to add in is another version of delete. And we're going to delete items with IDs of type an array of UUID. Okay, we'll see how to do that. We're going to use that in a second. I just want to get it all together. And we're going to say variable index set of type index set. And we're going to create an empty one. Equals index set, so create an empty index set, and then we're going to create an enumeration. So let enumerated equal checklist dot items dot enumerated. Okay, and then we're going to iterate over that enumeration. So for index and item in that enumerated item checklist. Okay, Okay, and we're gonna do some filtering. We've not haven't done this in class, but we could filter this where ID contains item.id. Okay, so this is a really kind of nice, elegant set of code. So we created this enumeration to clean up how long this was, and I spelled that wrong. And we're gonna, for index and item, we're gonna get the index and item, but we're gonna do an immediate filter as these pop off. We're gonna see does this list of IDs contain that item's identifier, and if it does, we're gonna for that index set, that local index set we created, we are going to insert the index, okay? And then after we've gone through all those items, we are going to delete the offsets. We're going to use this offset, and we're going to pass it an index set, okay? So if this gets called, it's going to pass an array of identifiers. With that array of identifiers, it's going to create an index set where the items match the IDs in that, and then we're going to delete them. Okay, so those are our 3 delete functions. Okay, so that's our delete function. Okay, and in this case, deleting is being handled directly by our view model. Okay, it doesn't require anything special from our data model because the data model doesn't have to do anything special to delete. So our view model can handle that for us. Okay. So let's go back to our checklist view. Okay. And it's going to call the delete button. So let's go ahead and create a delete button. Variable delete button. It's a thing of some view. Okay. And this delete button is going to consist of a button. Okay. Where its action is that right there, and then its label is a trailing closure. Okay, so there's the label for the trailing closure. And let's clean that up a little. Okay, and that trailing closure, I'll put that image of the system name, and this is going to be the we'll make a trash can. Okay. And this action is going to be a with animation. Okay, it's also a nice little trailing closure. And we're going to say document.on or delete. We're going to delete items. Okay, now with IDs. Now where are these IDs coming from? Okay, and right now, put it to do fix. So I'll show the UI what we got to do to get this delete button. Okay. So the add button doesn't really care what's selected, but right now we can't select anything. So if we had a delete button, what would it do? What does it know what to do? So let's go and actually add that delete button. Let's go toolbar item, toolbar item. Oops. Okay, and we'll have a delete button. Okay, so right now it's just going to show the trash can, but we can show the problem. Is if we hit this trash can, how does it know which one to delete? It has to know which one we're selecting. So we need to add some intelligence for our selection. Okay, so in this case, we are going to have some internal state. We'll call this internal selection state. Okay, and let's put 3 there, so it makes it some documented code. And this is going to be an at state, very private, because nobody else needs to know about it. For our variable, our selection, and it's going to be equal to a set of UUID. Okay, and there we go. So right now our selection is not optional. Okay, now for this list, we can tell it what our selection is. and it's a binding to selection. Okay, and that should be enough for us to select stuff. So now we can select stuff, and we can hold down different keys to select different ones. Okay, and if we click outside, that selection goes away. So that's the behavior we want. Okay, the trash can doesn't do anything because we haven't flushed out that function. Okay, so let's finish that up. So on delete, okay, let's fix this. These IDs, so it wants an array of IDs. So we already have a set. So we are going to change that set into an array. And this is going to be, let's make sure I get this right. It should be just set of an array of that selection. Okay. So we have our selection, which is a set. We're going to take this array. We're going to make an array from that selection. Pass that array of IDs into here. This is going to do the enumeration, and we should be able to now select. Let's add some things, and then let's change our mind. Hit trash can, and then there they go. Okay. So now we can move stuff around. We can add things. Okay. We can try to rename stuff, but now we can't edit this. We can't change our names. We'll have to fix that next. Okay. Once we have selection, that's kind of overriding our ability to change that name. Okay. So let's see if we can fix that. Okay. But I forgot to change a couple things. This image, and this is button style dot borderless, so it matches. Okay. And that should be all we need right there for right now. Check over my code. We're not ready for undo manager yet. Okay. Now then, we need to be able to kind of switch back and forth between being able to select these things and also edit them. So we actually it's already there. We just had to I had to give it a pause. So if I select it and I give it a pause, then it'll edit things. Okay, maybe that's already working. But let's add some additional functionality. There's this thing called focus field. And this is really important for text fields and things like that where we want to know if it's being focused properly. Okay, so let's go to our checklist row. Okay, I'm going to move this off to the side. At our checklist row, we want to know if it's focused, meaning is this the thing that's being looked down or selected. So we're going to create a focus state, and it's going to be a private variable because nothing else needs to know. And it's going to be is title field focused, and it's a type boolean. Okay. And what we're going to do is, pardon me, for a text field, we're going to add we're going to check for this focused, and it's is title field focused. Okay, and that's going to allow us to keep our focus as we go through things. So nothing should change in our UI. Okay, but we might be able to use this focused later on. Okay, but we've taken care of that focused. Okay, and at the bottom of this HStack, we're going to create a spacer so it looks a little better. Okay, and then let's take a look. Is there anything else we want to change? That looks pretty good. What would this? Is there a border? Button style on this. Border. Let's wonder what that looks like. Toggle field. That doesn't really change anything. That's fine. Okay. Okay. So that's working. We can move things around. We can delete them. We can delete them with the delete button. We can delete them with the swipe command. The next thing we're going to add is we are going to add the ability to do and undo and redo our state. Okay, it'd be nice if we move something around, if we could hit Control Z or something and undo what we just did. Okay, so we're going to do a bunch of that work in our document. Okay, so I'm going to pull this over a little bit through our document, and we're going to add a bunch of undo commands to our document. Okay, and we don't have to worry about that until we start changing our state. Okay, so first we're going to do the move items one. Okay, and delete move items. Okay, so let's do this move items at, which was the first thing we did. Now we need to do this move items at, and in order to add an undo manager, we need to pass in an undo manager. Undo manager, and by default it will give a default value of nil. Okay, and after we've done this, we are going to register this change that's happened with the undo manager. So we're going to do undo manager, which may exist, register undo, and the target is self. Okay, and it has this handler, which it wants a completion handler, it wants a function. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and give it that function in the way of closure. And we're going to say doc in. So this undo thing, target self, is going to pass in our self. It's going to pass, and we're calling it doc. This is document. Okay, and we're going to set this undo this document, and we're going to call ourself again. Replace items. Okay, we need to actually add let's see, move items. We need to add some functionality here. We're going to add a new function, and we need to add some functionality. So let me talk about how this is going to work. Okay, the first thing we're going to get is, where is the old items? So we're going to say let old items equal checklist.items. Okay, what was our old state? So we're going to save our current state as old. We're going to change our state, and with our undo manager, we are going to create the function that puts us back to where we were. Okay, so that function is going to be called replace. I think it's called replace items. Replace items with new items. My W key is not working. Items. Okay, and that new item is going to be an array of checklist items. Okay. Okay, and that of course is also going to have its own undo manager. Okay, that's an optional with the default nil. Okay, and right now we're not going to do anything with that. Okay, and that should with, and there we go, I have an extra colon in there. And now what we can do is up here, we're removing the items. We're going to call doc dot replace items with the old items, and the undo managers whatever came in. Okay, and we'll flush this out in a second. So once again, we're going to move the items. We're going to prepare by saving the old items where they were. Okay, we'll apply the change. Okay, and with the undo manager, we're going to register a function, and that function is replace items. Okay, because it's going to go and replace, you'll see it'll replace our checklist items with our old one, and this is the register in the undo manager. Okay, so let's flesh out the replace items. Okay, and did I miss something here? Delete. Which one? We were working on move items, and do I need to do an animation? No. Okay. Okay. So with this replace items, we're going to do the opposite. Same thing. Let old items equal checklist.items. Okay. And then with animation, Okay. We are going to checklist.items equals new items. So we're going to replace whatever these new items come in, we're going to replace our current setup with these new items. Okay. Now, it would be nice if we had some ability to change the animation that it's doing. So on this replace items, we're also going to add a call for what animation to use. And it's of type animation optional, and we're going to use the default one. And then with this with animation, okay, what's going to allow a user, which in this case is us, but some other person, might want to change whether or not there's animation state, okay? Oh, and this should be, okay. And even though we're using the default one, our users might, of our API might want to, or this document class might want to use a different animation. Now, we saved the old items because here we're changing our state. So as we change our state, we need to, of course, register with our undo manager to go backwards and forwards. So register undo with target is self, and then we have that completion handler again. Okay, and this would be doc in. Okay, and doc dot replace items. Okay, with, and this will be the old items. The undo manager is whatever was passed in, and animation is whatever was passed in. Okay, so this is the basic process for undo. We save our state. That's going to become our old state. We create the new state, and then we register the undo, the operation required to get us back to where we were. Okay. Okay, and that should get us undo for moving. So we can move around, and if I hit Control Z, I get nothing. Right? Oh, I get nothing because I haven't set up an undo manager, right? These things require an undo manager, and I'm not passing that in. Okay, so let's go to my checklist view. Okay. And checklist view. Where is my onMove command? Okay, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes real quick. Is I need to pass this checklist view the undo manager I'm using. So let's go back to our checklist view. Currently, what I'm doing, I've got delete items, I've got an add, I've got a move, I've got move items at, okay? And I'm not passing it. Oops, I should have moved that window because it's the right size. I'm not passing an undo manager, and the compiler's not complaining because I've given a default value of nil. So we need to create an undo manager and pass it in, okay? So we already have at the top an @environment object, and that got created for us in the view hierarchy already. And there's already another one called the @environment, okay? And it's a it already exists, and it's a strut. So it's not an object. It's a undo man. It's environment, not environment object, because it's actually a strut. This one already exists as .undo manager, and we're going to call it a variable undo manager. Did I spell that wrong? Environment. Okay. Okay, so this thing already exists on our view hierarchy because the document created it. So when we had our persist app, this thing already created that original undo manager for us to use. And it's already existing in the environment in the view hierarchy. But now, under onMove, I can come in here and I could pass in the undo, to offset, and I can pass here the undo manager. Okay, and now that undo manager exists to register state. So I can move this around, and I should be able to go to edit or hit Control Z, undo, and move that again. And I could also hit undo and then redo. Okay, undo, redo. Okay? And undo and redo, the undo manager, it kind of knows if I'm redoing this. If I'm calling the same function back and forth, it actually tracks if it's an undo or a redo operation for us, which is pretty plush. Okay? Now, we need to, of course, do that for all the things that we're going to do. Okay? So let's go to our document. Okay? So we've got this one registered with undo. This one's good with undo. Now our deletes are not ready. They're not registered for undo. Okay. So let's go ahead and get our undo items registered for delete items. So where is delete items? So I'm missing one more function. Delete item, in case it's just one, at index integer. Okay, and that's going to take an undo manager of type undo manager. That might exist. Let's go with the default value of nil. Okay, so we never did the delete item one. So let all items equal checklist dot items. Okay, and then with animation. Okay, we are going to, we don't need what comes out of this, checklist dot items dot remove at, and this is index. Okay, so where this one wants an index. Okay, really, I should kind of rearrange this to be in kind of a make sense order. Okay. And now let's register with our undo manager. So undo manager dot register undo action. The target is self. This is a completion handler. It's trailing, so we can clean this up a little bit. Okay. So we're going to register our undo ones, and we are going to use doc in replace items. Okay. And with the old items. Okay. The undo manager pass it. And we're fine with the default animation. Okay, we're not having that do anything. So now our delete item is working. Okay. Now let's get our delete items working with our undo manager. So there's a lot of boilerplate code. Undo manager, so type undo manager. And that should be consistent. Okay, and this could be nil. Okay. Now, what is our old state? Okay. Okay, now in this case, we don't care what our old state is. Okay, here we have this delete offsets or delete offsets. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put the undo manager here. Undo, let me just copy this over. Okay, and this function right here ends up just calling this. So we're going to have our undo manager, which is right here. This undo manager is the one that cares about that. That one's going to handle undo, right? Only have one function handle undo because this one does the action. Okay, so delete items with index set. Where is my code for delete? Okay, there we are. So let all items equal checklist dot items. Okay, so we're saving our old state, performing the change to our state in the with animation. Okay, and now we're going to register with our undo manager. Undo manager dot register undo. The target is self. I wish it would just, okay. And then our completion handler, we want doc in. Okay, and doc dot replace items with the old items. the undo manager, passing that one around, and then we're fine with the default animation for this case. Okay, so that takes care of that one. Okay, did we take care of move? I believe we take care of move. We haven't taken care of this delete yet. So let's see where I put that delete. And take a look. Add item, delete, add an index. Okay. Let's take care of that one. Undo manager. Sure. Of type undo manager equals nil. Okay, let's make that consistent. Okay. There we go. So let old items equal checklist.items. Okay. And then that delete item at index. Oh, this is just delete. Let me. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. Delete offset. Delete offset. Delete item. Okay, so I missed something. I'm going to do a refactor. I'm going to rename this delete item. Yeah, that way it's consistent. Okay, there we go. And then we are going to wrap this with animation. Okay. And now we can register our, oh, what did I mess up? I missed something. That's just the delete. Where is this delete? Did I put it in the wrong spot? Sets. Is checklist having delete? Oh, so I just deleted that, or I just duplicated that because I had that typo earlier. Okay, and now I can come into this delete on delete and document delete item. Let's see where it's going to be complaining. Okay, so I actually just had duplicated that twice by having just delete. Okay, that explains why I was a little confused. Okay, now let's fix this add item. Okay, so add item, that needs a undo manager. Okay, and that equals nil. Okay, let's pull that over a little bit. Okay, and let's get our state. Okay. Okay. Checklist.add item, that's good. We're going to add count a little bit later. That's a UI feature that we'll add later. So let me put that under to do. Okay, and that means it'll show up here as a to-do list for me. To do, and we're going to undo, register our change with our undo manager. Register undo, target is self. Okay, let's go ahead and create that standard handler. Okay, doc in. And this time we're going to do with animation. Okay, and doc.delete. Delete item. Okay, and our index is actually count minus 1. Okay. Okay, and we'll have to show you where that count comes from. undo manager, and we're going to pass in that undo manager. Okay, so we need to know where we're at on this checklist. So let count equal checklist dot items dot count. Okay, and now we've got this count. So what's going to happen here? We're going to add an item. Currently, the way it's set up, that item's being added at the very end. Okay, so we're going to go to the very end, and that's how many we have. And the index of how many we have minus 1 will be that last item we just added. And it's minus 1 because remember, arrays start counting at 0. Okay, so that's our add item. We have delete items done. We have replace. Let's see, we have move, replace, delete, add. Okay. Now, there's a couple, let's check all this first, okay. So, can we add an item? And can we hit Control Z? No. We're hearing that beeping sound. Okay, that's because this move, if we go to our list, move is passing in the undo manager, but delete, it's not. Undo manager, okay. The add button is not passing in the undo manager, okay. And I bet you our delete button is not doing the undo manager. Okay. And now let's see if that does it. Okay, so let's add, Control Z, that's working. And we Control Z, it takes the one off the bottom. And if I Control Z, it moves it. If I Control Z again, it removes it. So the undo manager remembers the order of these. All the undo managers actually just remember these functions. It's got a list of these functions. And it's popping off the end of these functions. Okay, let's save this document. .persist. Okay. Oops, got an accident dot there. Whoa there, Nelly. Whoa there. That's not behaving. There we go. Now it's. And we should be able to come in here and click that arrow and rename that. And there we go. We're good. Okay. Let's see. Let's flesh this out just a tiny bit more, and then we'll call it a night. Okay. You know what? We'll call it a night. The next thing we're going to do, or we'll do this in class, that gives people some chance to look at this and ask questions, is this checklist row view. It's got this text field, okay? We're going to add the ability to undo and redo the naming of our titles, okay? So currently if we run this program and we open this and we rename something, I can't undo that change. It's not being registered. Okay, so we'll show you how to register that change, because currently that change is being conducted on our data model directly, right? This change list, this is it's acting on, it's passing an item. So, oops, wrong view. I want to go over here. Oops. It's changing this directly, and nothing's being registered that it should be understanding this change. Okay, so there's a couple different ways we could do that. We could send out a notification on a dead set, which I'll show you how to do on Tuesday. But we could also use this text field, has some things called on change of, on commit, etc. And we could have our document make these changes to the title for us. So I'm going to show you how to do that on Tuesday. I think we've covered enough today. Okay, bye.